The dust storm hit without warning, turning the afternoon sky the color of dried blood. Eliza Hart pressed her handkerchief against her nose and mouth, tasting grit with every breath as the stagecoach lurched to a violent stop. Through the swirling sand, she could barely make out the driver's silhouette as he scrambled down from his perch. "Everyone stay inside." Old Pete's voice cracked like a whip through the howling wind, but his words were cut short by the unmistakable crack of a rifle. Eliza's heart hammered against her corset stays. She'd traveled 2,000 miles from Philadelphia to reach Dry Creek, answering an advertisement for a mail-order bride, now 20 miles from her destination, with the Sangre de Cristo Mountains barely visible through the storm. She wondered if she'd live to see her intended husband. The coach door flew open. A man with a bandana over his face thrust his head inside, eyes scanning the 3 passengers. Eliza, a traveling salesman clutching his sample case, and an elderly woman who'd boarded in Santa Fe. "Where's the bride?" The man's voice was muffled but harsh. The salesman pointed a trembling finger at Eliza. "Please, I have children." "Shut your mouth." The bandit grabbed Eliza's wrist, hauling her from the coach. She stumbled in the sand, her traveling dress tangling around her boots. "Boss wants to inspect his merchandise." "I don't know what you mean," Eliza gasped, struggling against his grip. "I'm expected in Dry Creek. My husband—" The man laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Your husband, lady. You got no idea who bought that contract." Through the amber haze of dust, more riders materialized. 6 men, faces covered, rifles glinting despite the dim light. Old Pete lay motionless beside the coach wheel, and Eliza's stomach turned. These weren't common thieves. This was planned. "Tie her hands," ordered a rider on a black horse. "Burke wants her delivered clean. No bruises, no tears in that pretty dress." Burke, the name meant nothing to her, but the way they said it like a prayer to something dark made her skin crawl. As rough rope bit into her wrists, the thunder of hooves cut through the storm. The bandits spun, raising their weapons, but the rider was already among them. Eliza caught a glimpse of a tall figure on a gray horse, moving like part of the animal itself. His revolver spoke twice, and 2 bandits toppled from their saddles. "It's Cole!" someone shouted. "Scatter!" The remaining bandits fled into the storm, their leader wheeling his black horse in a tight circle. "This ain't your business, Cole." "Everything in this valley is my business." The newcomer's voice was deep, steady as bedrock. "Tell Burke if he wants to shop for women, he can do it somewhere else." The black horse reared, its rider fighting for control. "You just signed your death warrant. Cowboy, Burke owns more than you know." "He doesn't own me." The bandits vanished into the churning dust, leaving Eliza standing beside the coach, hands still bound. Her rescuer dismounted. A tall man in his 30s with sun-weathered features and eyes the color of winter sage. He cut her bonds with a single stroke of his knife. "You hurt, miss." Eliza found her voice. "No, thank you. Is Pete—" The man knelt beside the driver, checking for a pulse. After a moment, he shook his head. "I'm sorry. Pete was a good man." He stood, dusting his hands on worn chaps. "Jacob Cole. I run cattle out of the Triple C Ranch." "Eliza Hart." She tried to steady her voice. "From Philadelphia. I'm supposed to meet my intended in Dry Creek. Thomas Morrison." Something flickered across Jacob's face. "Morrison." He glanced at the elderly woman peering from the coach window, then back at Eliza. "When did you arrange this marriage?" 3 months ago, through the Territorial Matrimonial Association. "Why?" Jacob's jaw tightened. "Because Thomas Morrison died of fever 6 weeks past. Whoever's been writing you letters." It wasn't him. The wind howled louder, and Eliza felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "That's impossible. I have his letters. The contract—" "Was likely sold to the highest bidder after Morrison passed." Jacob retrieved his hat from where the wind had taken it. And in Dry Creek, that means Silas Burke. Who is Silas Burke? Owns the slaughterhouse, half the businesses in town, and thinks he can own people too. Jacob studied her with those sage green eyes. Mail order contracts get traded like cattle futures out here. Burke's been collecting them. Eliza's mind reeled. She'd spent her last dollar on Passage West, escaping the factory where she'd worked since her parents died of cholera. The marriage contract had seemed like salvation, a respectable husband, a new life, honest work. I can't go back, she heard herself say. No one's saying you should. Jacob helped the elderly woman from the coach. But you can't go to Burke either. Not if you value more than your life. The salesman scrambled out, clutching his case. What about Pete? We can't just leave him. I'll send men for the body. Jacob secured Pete's valuables, a pocket watch, a few dollars, a letter addressed to his daughter. Right now, we need to reach town before this storm gets worse. Can you ride, Miss Hart? I've never been on a horse. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Then you'll ride with me, ma'am. You'll take Pete's seat up top with... He looked at the salesman. Cornelius Wadsworth, the man supplied, straightening his dusty coat. I sell tonics and remedies. You any good with a rifle? Wadsworth. I have never fired one in my life. Then pray we don't meet more trouble. Jacob helped Eliza mount his gray stallion, then swung up behind her. His arms came around her to take the reins, and she caught the scent of leather, sage, and honest sweat. After the pomade and false promises of Philadelphia, it was oddly comforting. They rode through the dying storm, the coach creaking along behind them. Eliza tried to process everything the attack. Morrison's death, this man who'd appeared like an avenging angel from the dust. Questions tumbled through her mind. Why did you help us? She felt him shrug. Been tracking those men since they hit a homestead yesterday. Didn't figure on them targeting the stage. But you knew they worked for Burke. Burke's got his fingers in every dirty deal from here to Denver. Stealing women just seems like his latest venture. The casual way he said it chilled her. There are others. 2 arrived last month. 1 disappeared. The other works in his saloon now, though work might be too kind a word for it. Eliza closed her eyes, seeing her carefully laid plans crumble like sand castles. What am I going to do? First, we get you somewhere safe. The Blue Lantern Inn is run by May Thompson. She's good people. After that, he paused. You said you can work. I can cook, clean, sew. I ran a boarding house kitchen in Philadelphia before... She stopped. Before the money ran out. Before the landlord's wandering hands grew too bold. Before the factory was her only option. The ranch could use a cook. My men have been living on burnt beans and leather they call beef jerky. You're offering me employment. I'm offering you a choice. Work for room and board until you figure out your next move, or take your chances in town. But I won't lie, Burke doesn't give up what he considers his property. Property. The word made her spine stiffen. I'm no man's property, Mr. Cole. No, ma'am, but Burke might need convincing of that fact. As they crested a rise, Dry Creek spread below them, a collection of wooden buildings huddled against the vastness of sagebrush and sand. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the late afternoon sun painted the distant mountains purple. There it is, Jacob said, for better or worse. Eliza studied the town that was supposed to be her new home. It looked nothing like the prosperous settlement Morrison's letters had described. False-fronted buildings lined a single main street. Cattle pens sprawled beside what must be Burke's slaughterhouse, the stench reaching them even at this distance. Morrison wrote about churches and schools, she said quietly. There's one church. Father Doyle does his best. As for a school... Jacob pointed to a small building with a crooked bell tower. Teacher quit last winter. Kids learn what they can from their folks now. They descended into town as the sun touched the mountain peaks. People emerged from doorways to stare at the coach with its grim cargo. Whispers followed their progress down Main Street. "Is that Pete? Who's the woman with Cole? Burke's not going to like this." Jacob reined up outside a 2-story building with Blue Lantern Inn, painted in fading letters. A woman in her 50s emerged, wiping flour-dusted hands on her apron. Her face went hard when she saw Eliza. "Another one," May Thompson said flatly. "Not what you think." Jacob dismounted, helping Eliza down. "Miss Hart was supposed to marry Tom Morrison. Burke sent men to collect her." May's expression softened slightly. "Poor child. Come inside. You look dead on your feet." "I can pay," Eliza began. "We'll sort that later." May shot a look at Jacob. "You planning to fight Burke over this?" "I'm planning to mind my own business. Miss Hart needs a room and a meal. That's all." May snorted. "Since when does Jacob Cole mind his own business where Burke's concerned?" "Since I got tired of burying good people." The weight in his words silenced May. She ushered Eliza inside, leaving Jacob to deal with the coach and its sorrowful burden. The inn's interior was clean but worn, smelling of beeswax and bread. May led Eliza to a small room overlooking the back alley. "Lock your door at night," May instructed. "Burke's men drink at the saloon across the street. Sometimes they get ideas." "Mr. Cole mentioned other women." May's face darkened. "Sally Jennings from Ohio. Sweet girl, thought she was marrying a banker. Burke had her serving drinks in his saloon within a week. When she tried to leave, she shook her head. They found her in the desert. Coyotes didn't leave much." Eliza sank onto the narrow bed. "And the other, Lucy Stone, sharper than Sally, figured out the game quick. She's still at the saloon, but she's surviving, playing Burke's game until she can find a way out." "Why doesn't the law?" "What law?" May laughed bitterly. "Sheriff Whelan died last spring. Since then, we've got Deputy Reed, and he's so deep in Burke's pocket he can see lint." A knock interrupted them. Jacob stood in the doorway, hat in hand. "Pardon the intrusion. Wanted to let you know I sent word to the ranch. If you decide on that job, someone will come fetch you tomorrow." "Why are you helping me?" Eliza asked. He was quiet for a moment. "My mother came west as a mail-order bride. Found herself in a similar situation. A good man helped her then." He settled his hat on his head. "Besides, Burke and I have history. He doesn't get to add you to his collection." After he left, May studied Eliza with knowing eyes. "Jacob Cole's a good man, but he's got ghosts. Lost his wife and son 3 winters back. Fever took them while he was on a cattle drive. He seems very capable." "Oh, he's that. Before he took up ranching, he had another profession, one that required a fast gun and flexible morals." May moved to the door. "Dinner's at 6. I'll have water sent up for washing." Alone, Eliza unpacked her few possessions: 3 dresses, carefully mended, her mother's Bible, a daguerreotype of her parents on their wedding day, the packet of letters from Thomas Morrison. She saw the deception now, the handwriting too flowery, the promises too grand. She moved to the window, watching the town settle into evening. Somewhere out there, Silas Burke was learning his prize had been snatched away. And somewhere, Jacob Cole was preparing for whatever came next. The sagebrush whispered in the wind. And Eliza Hart orphan, factory girl, almost bride, faced the truth. She'd traveled 2,000 miles to find a new life. Now she had to fight for it. Outside, a church bell tolled the hour, its bronze voice carrying across the desert. 6 o'clock. Time for dinner and for decisions. She locked the door behind her and went downstairs, ready to face whatever this wild land would throw at her next. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dirt street as Eliza emerged from the Blue Lantern Inn. She'd barely slept, jumping at every creak and footstep in the night. May Thompson had served her a breakfast of cornbread and beans, refusing payment. "You'll need your money," May had said quietly. "Burke doesn't forget." Now, standing on the wooden sidewalk, Eliza surveyed Dry Creek in daylight. The town looked even more sparse than it had the evening before. A few merchants swept their storefronts, and a drunk slept propped against the saloon wall. The smell of cattle and slaughter hung thick in the air. Miss Hart. She turned to find a young Mexican man, perhaps 25, holding his hat. His clothes were clean but patched, and kindness shone in his dark eyes. "I'm Miguel Santos, from the Triple C, mister. Cole sent me to fetch you, if you're willing." Eliza glanced back at the inn. Through the window, she could see May watching, worry etched on her face. "I haven't decided yet." "No rush, miss. But if you'd like to see the ranch, get a feel for the place." He gestured to a wagon loaded with supplies. "I'm heading back anyway. You could ride along. No obligation." The offer tempted her. Staying in town meant remaining within Burke's reach. But accepting Cole's offer felt like jumping from one uncertain situation to another. "Miss Hart," a woman's voice called out. Lucy Stone crossed the street, her saloon dress garish in the morning light. Up close, Eliza could see she was barely 20, with hollow eyes that belonged on someone much older. "You're the one from yesterday," Lucy said. "The one Cole pulled from Burke's men." "Yes." Lucy glanced around nervously. "Come with me, quickly." She led Eliza into the alley beside the general store. Miguel followed, hand resting on his gun belt. "Burke's offering $50 to whoever brings you to him," Lucy whispered. "Says you're his legal property, bought and paid for." "That's a lie." "Doesn't matter. Money talks louder than truth here." Lucy gripped Eliza's hands. "Get out of town, now. Take Cole's offer or ride the next stage, but don't stay where Burke can reach you." "Come with me," Eliza urged, "if it's so dangerous." "I can't." Lucy's laugh was bitter. "Burke holds my contract, real legal-like. I try to run, he'll have the law drag me back." She pulled away. "But you still have a chance." Before Eliza could respond, Lucy hurried back toward the saloon. Through the bat-wing doors, Eliza glimpsed a heavy-set man watching from the shadows. "Miss," Miguel touched her elbow gently. "Might be wise to make that decision now." As if to emphasize his point, 3 rough-looking men emerged from the saloon, eyes scanning the street. One pointed at Eliza. "The wagon," she decided quickly. Miguel helped her up, then climbed aboard and snapped the reins. They rolled down Main Street at a casual pace that took all of Eliza's willpower not to urge faster. Behind them, she heard boots on boardwalk, growing closer. "Hold up there, Santos." Miguel kept driving. "Morning, Reed." Deputy Reed jogged alongside the wagon, his badge glinting. He was a thin man with a face like spoiled milk. "That woman's wanted for questioning." "What for?" Miguel asked mildly. "Theft, mister. Burke says she took property belonging to him." "What property?" Reed's face reddened. "That's between her and Mr. Burke." "Well, she's employed at the Triple C now. Mr. Cole vouches for her. If Burke wants to talk, he knows where to find us." "You can't just... Actually, I can..." Miguel's voice hardened. "Unless you got a warrant." Reed's hand moved toward his gun. Miguel's moved faster, not drawing but resting on the butt of his Colt. "Wouldn't do that, deputy. Not over no warrant." They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Reed stepped back, spitting in the dust. "This ain't over." "Never is," Miguel agreed, and drove on. Once they cleared town, Eliza released the breath she'd been holding. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We got 15 miles of open country, and Burke's got fast horses." But the journey passed without incident. Miguel proved a pleasant companion, telling her about the ranch, the other hands, the daily routine. His family had worked cattle since before the Anglos came. He explained. His grandfather had owned a massive ranch until the war with Mexico changed the borders. "Now we work for wages," he said without bitterness. "But Mr. Cole, He treats us fair. Not all do. The Triple C sprawled across a valley between two ridges, with Cottonwood Creek winding through like a green ribbon. The main house was modest but solid, built of local timber and adobe. Barns, corrals, and a bunkhouse clustered nearby. Eliza counted at least a dozen men working various tasks. Jacob Cole emerged from the barn as they arrived, sleeves rolled up and covered in dust. He helped Eliza down from the wagon. "Welcome to the Triple C. Miguel show you any trouble?" "Deputy Reed tried to arrest me for theft." Jacob's expression darkened. "Burke's moving fast. Come on, I'll show you the kitchen." The house was bachelor bare but clean. The kitchen occupied most of the back section, with a massive wood stove, work tables, and a pantry that made Eliza's heart sink. Sacks of beans, flour, and cornmeal, strips of dried meat hanging like leather, not much else. "I know it's not much," Jacob said, reading her expression. "The men have been making do." Making do? She examined a pot crusted with what might have been beans or tar. "Mr. Cole, this is a tragedy." Despite the situation, he smiled. "Can you fix it?" Eliza rolled up her sleeves. "Get me to town for supplies. I'll need vegetables, eggs, milk if possible. Decent cuts of meat, not just what's left after you sell the good stuff. Spices. Lord knows you need spices. And lard, real lard, not whatever this is." She poked at a can of something gray. "Make a list. Miguel will get whatever you need. And my wages. Room, board, and $2 a week." It was fair for ranch work. More than fair. Considering. "I accept. When do I start?" "How about now? The men eat at 6, and they're hoping for something that doesn't fight back." Eliza surveyed her battlefield. "Then you'd better clear out and let me work." By evening, she'd transformed the kitchen. The stove gleamed. Pots scoured bright. She'd sent Miguel back to town with a list that made his eyes widen, but he'd returned with everything, even managing fresh eggs and milk from the widow Perkins. When the dinner bell rang, 15 cowboys filed in, hats in hand. They were a mixed bunch, Anglo, Mexican, even a freedman named Jonas. They stared at the spread on the table like they'd seen a vision. "Chicken and dumplings," Eliza announced. "Cornbread, green beans with fatback, and dried apple pie for dessert. Eat up." The silence that followed was almost religious. Then Jonas whispered, "Lord have mercy," and the spell broke. Men dove for the food like they hadn't eaten in weeks. "Where'd you learn to cook like this?" asked a grizzled hand named Hank. "My mother, then a boarding house in Philadelphia." Eliza refilled the dumpling bowl. Though they didn't appreciate it properly there. "Their loss," Hank declared through a full mouth. Jacob ate quietly at the head of the table, but she caught him watching her. When the men finished, every scrap devoured. The pie dish practically licked clean, they filed out with mumbled thanks and wondering looks. "I believe you've just become the most popular person on the ranch," Jacob said, helping her clear dishes. "It's just food." "No, it's home. Some of these men haven't had that in years." May Thompson arrived as Eliza finished washing up. The older woman hugged her tightly. "Wanted to make sure you were settled." May glanced around the clean kitchen approvingly. "And to warn you, Burke was in town this afternoon, making threats." "What kind of threats?" Jacob asked. "The kind that involve burning things down if he doesn't get his property back." May's face was grim. "He's got it in his head that Miss Hart belongs to him. Showed everyone a contract." "It's not legal," Eliza protested. "I never signed anything with him." "He's got a paper says different, witnessed and everything." Jacob's jaw tightened. "Forgery." "Prove it," May challenged. "With Reed as deputy and the nearest judge 200 miles away, Burke makes his own law. Then maybe it's time that changed." "Don't start a war over me," Eliza said quickly. "I'll leave. Take the next stage." "To where?" Jacob asked. "With what money and you think Burke won't follow?" She had no answer. Everything she owned was in this house. May patted her shoulder. You're safer here than anywhere. The Triple C men are loyal, and Burke's not quite ready to attack Cole directly. She paused. Yet, after May left, Eliza found Jacob on the porch, smoking a cigar and watching the sunset paint the mountains red. I'm bringing trouble to your door, she said. Trouble was already here. Burke wants my water rights to Cottonwood Creek. Figures if he controls the water, he controls the valley. So I'm just a side issue. He looked at her then, really looked at her. No, you're a person who deserves better than being traded like cattle. Burke needs to learn that. And you're going to teach him, if necessary. He stubbed out the cigar. I told you I used to have another profession. Still got friends from those days. Men who understand Burke's language? The implication chilled her. I don't want violence on my account. Neither do I. But sometimes wanting isn't enough. He stood. Lock your door tonight. I'll have Miguel sleep in the house. Just in case. Eliza lay awake long into the night, listening to every sound. Coyotes howled in the distance, and once she heard horses, but they passed by. She thought of Lucy Stone, trapped in Burke's saloon, of Sally Jennings, lost to the desert, of Thomas Morrison, dead before she even left Philadelphia. She thought, too, of Jacob Cole, standing between her and danger for reasons she didn't fully understand. He'd lost his own family. May had said, maybe protecting her was his way of fighting back against a world that took what it wanted. Near dawn, she finally slept and dreamed of sagebrush and wide skies, of kitchens full of laughter and tables surrounded by grateful faces. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the window and someone was knocking. Miss Eliza, Miguel's voice. Sorry to wake you, but we got company coming. She dressed quickly and found the men gathered in the yard, weapons visible but not drawn. A dust cloud approached from the direction of town. Jacob stood at the front, relaxed but ready. Stay inside, he told her. No, she moved beside him. If this is about me, I'll face it. The riders resolved into Deputy Reed and 4 men, all armed. They stopped just outside the gate. Morning, Cole, Reed called. Here on official business. State it. Reed produced a paper. Got a warrant for the woman, theft of contracted services. Let me see that warrant. Reed hesitated, then rode forward to hand it over. Jacob studied it, then passed it to Eliza. The document looked official enough, with Burke's signature and Reed's seal. This is a lie, she said clearly. I never signed any contract with Silas Burke. Got witnesses say different. Reed smirked. You can tell it to Burke. He's willing to be reasonable. Forget the whole thing if you come willing. And if she doesn't, then we take her anyway. The Triple C men shifted, hands moving to weapons. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Then Father Doyle rode into the yard on his ancient mule, looking like he'd materialized from the dust itself. The priest was in his 60s, face weathered as old leather, eyes sharp as flint, as... Gentlemen, he said mildly. Awful lot of guns for such a fine morning. This ain't your business, Padre, Reed warned. Oh, but it is. Father Doyle dismounted with surprising agility. Miss Hart, I believe I received your letter. Eliza blinked. What letter? The one you sent from Philadelphia, requesting my services for your marriage to Thomas Morrison. Dated 3 months ago. He produced an envelope from his robes. I've been expecting you. Reed scowled. Morrison's dead. So I heard. Tragic. But that doesn't change the fact that Miss Hart contracted with me, not Mr. Burke. In the eyes of the church, she's under my protection until the matter's resolved. Burke won't like this. Burke can take it up with the Almighty. Father Doyle's smile was beatific. Now, unless you're planning to arrest a priest for ministering to his flock, I suggest you gentlemen move along. Reed's face cycled through several colors before settling on an unhealthy purple. "This ain't over." "It never is," Father Doyle agreed sadly. The riders left, dust and threats trailing behind them. Once they were gone, Jacob turned to the priest. "That was convenient timing. Father, the Lord works in mysterious ways." Father Doyle winked at Eliza. "Though sometimes he needs a little help. Miguel's a good lad. Told me about your situation last night. But the letter, oh, that's real enough. Came 2 months ago. Poor Morrison asked me to keep it safe." He handed it to her. "Your handwriting. I believe it was her careful request for a proper Christian ceremony, her hopes for a blessed union." Reading it now, knowing Morrison was already dead when it arrived, made her eyes sting. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me yet. Burke's not the type to let legal niceties stop him. You've got a reprieve, not a solution." "Then what do you suggest?" Jacob asked. Father Doyle's eyes twinkled. "Well now, seems to me if Miss Hart was properly married, Burke's claim would dissolve like salt in water. Course, finding a suitable husband on short notice." He looked meaningfully at Jacob. "Father," Jacob warned, "just thinking out loud." The priest mounted his mule. "But you might consider it. Marriage is a powerful legal protection out here, and Miss Hart makes fine chicken and dumplings. Or so I heard." He rode off, humming a hymn, leaving stunned silence behind. "He didn't just suggest—" Eliza began. "He did." Jacob rubbed his face. "Father Doyle's got his own way of solving problems. It's ridiculous." "Is it?" He looked at her seriously. "You need protection. I need a cook and someone to manage the house. It wouldn't have to be— that is, you'd have your own room, same as now. A business arrangement, if that's what you want." She studied him, this man who'd saved her, sheltered her, stood between her and danger. "I need to think." "Take your time. Burke's not going anywhere, and neither am I." That afternoon, while kneading bread for dinner, Eliza pondered Father Doyle's suggestion. A marriage of convenience wasn't uncommon on the frontier. It offered legal protection, social standing, security, and Jacob Cole was proving to be an honorable man. But what about love? What about the dreams she'd carried west, of building something real with a partner? Then again, those dreams had led her to a false contract and Burke's grasp. Maybe practical was better than romantic. Maybe safe was worth more than passionate. Through the kitchen window, she watched Jacob working with a young horse, patient and firm. He'd offered her a choice, not a demand. That alone set him apart from every other man she'd dealt with. As the sun began to sink, she made her decision. Not because she had to, but because for the first time in months, she actually had the power to choose. The bread rose golden in the oven, filling the kitchen with warmth and promise. Whatever came next, she'd face it with flour on her hands and steel in her spine. The smoke was visible from 5 miles away, a black column rising against the October sky like an accusation. Jacob spurred his gray stallion harder, knowing already what he would find. Behind him, Miguel and 3 other hands rode fast, but Jacob outdistanced them all. The Hendricks place was gone, where the modest homestead had stood that morning. Only charred timbers remained. The barn still smoldered, sending up lazy spirals of smoke. In the yard, Tom Hendricks knelt beside a small bundle wrapped in a quilt. "Tom," Jacob dismounted, approaching slowly. The homesteader looked up with hollow eyes. "They came at dawn. Said I had to sign over my water rights or burn. I told them to go to hell." His voice broke. "Martha tried to get the children out. The smoke—" Jacob knelt beside his neighbor. The bundle was too small, too still. "How many—" "Just our Sarah, 10 years old next month." Tom's hands shook. "The boys made it out. Martha's at the Widow Perkins' place with burns on her arms." "Did you see who—" 4 men wore masks, but I recognized Pete Sawyer's bay mare. He rides for Burke. Miguel and the others arrived, taking in the devastation. Jonas crossed himself while Hank cursed steadily under his breath. "We'll help you rebuild," Jacob said quietly. Tom stood, suddenly looking far older than his 30 years. "No, I'm done. Soon as Martha can travel. We're going back east. Burke wins." "Tom, I've got 2 boys left. Cole, I won't risk them for dirt and water." He looked at the ruins of his home. "You got no wife, no children. You can afford to fight him. I can't." They buried little Sarah Hendricks as the sun set, Father Doyle speaking words over the small grave while her brothers wept. Half the valley turned out, faces grim with shared grief and growing anger. Burke himself appeared at the edge of the cemetery, sitting his black horse like a king surveying his domain. He touched his hat to the mourners, a mockery of respect, then rode away. The message was clear: this could happen to any of them. Back at the Triple C, Eliza had supper waiting, but nobody had much appetite. She'd heard the news from Mae Thompson, who'd helped treat Martha's burns. "A child," Eliza said softly. Serving coffee no one really wanted. "He burned out a family and killed a child over water rights." "Burke doesn't do his own burning," Hank said bitterly. "Just gives orders and collects profits." "Same thing in God's eyes," Jonas added. Jacob stared into his coffee cup. "Tom's right. I've got no family to risk." "You've got us," Miguel said firmly. "We ride for the brand, boss, you know that." "This isn't your fight." "Hell it isn't." Hank slammed his cup down. "Burke gets your water. He controls the whole valley, every small ranch, every farm. We'll all be working for him or starving." Eliza moved quietly around the table, refilling cups. When she reached Jacob, she rested her hand briefly on his shoulder. The touch was light, but he felt it like a brand. "What will you do?" she asked. "I don't know yet." That night, unable to sleep, Jacob found Eliza in the kitchen, rolling out dough by lamplight. "Couldn't sleep either," he asked. "I keep thinking about that little girl, Sarah." She punched the dough down harder than necessary. "In Philadelphia, children died all the time. Disease, accidents, poverty, but this was murder." "Yes." She shaped the dough into loaves with practiced hands. "Father Doyle's suggestion about marriage. I've been thinking." Jacob waited. "If we did it married, would it really protect me from Burke?" "Legally, yes. A husband's rights supersede any contract Burke might forge." "And would it help you against Burke?" He considered. "Maybe. A married man with a respectable wife carries more weight in the community. Harder to paint as a troublemaker or claim jumper." "Then I'll do it." She faced him, flour dusting her hands. "On conditions." "Name them." "I keep cooking and managing the house. You don't interfere with how I run things. I want wages put aside, my own money. And..." She hesitated. "It's a business arrangement only. Separate rooms." "Agreed." "Just like that." "Miss Hart Eliza, I'm not looking for a wife in the traditional sense. My heart's buried on that hill with Anna and little James. But I can offer you protection, respect, and a home, if that's enough. It's more than I had yesterday." She turned back to her dough. "When?" "Soon, before Burke makes his next move." 3 days later, they stood before Father Doyle in the small church. Mae Thompson and Miguel served as witnesses. Eliza wore her best dress, a deep blue wool she'd saved for special occasions. Jacob had shaved and put on his Sunday suit. "Bit rushed, isn't it?" Father Doyle asked before the ceremony. "Everything's been discussed, Father," Jacob assured him. The priest studied them both, then sighed. "Very well, but marriage is a sacrament, not a business contract. Remember that." The ceremony was brief. Jacob's hands were steady as he slipped his mother's ring onto Eliza's finger. Her voice only trembled slightly on the vows. When Father Doyle pronounced them man and wife, they stood awkwardly until May coughed. "You're supposed to kiss her, you fool," she whispered. Jacob brushed his lips against Eliza's cheek, a touch light as butterfly wings. Then it was done. Mrs. Jacob Cole stood where Miss Eliza Hart had been. They returned to the ranch to find trouble waiting. Silas Burke sat on the porch, flanked by Deputy Reed and 6 armed men. He was a big man running to fat, with pale eyes like chips of dirty ice. When he smiled, Eliza understood why children crossed the street to avoid him. "Congratulations on your nuptials," Burke said, not rising. "Though I'm afraid they're invalid." "Get off my land," Jacob said quietly. "Your land for how long?" Burke produced a document. "See, I've been buying up notes. Seems you borrowed heavy to stock the ranch after that bad winter. Payments due in full by month's end." Jacob took the paper. Scanning it, his face went still. "This isn't due for 6 months." "Was, but the fine print allows the holder to call it in early. And I'm the holder now." Burke's smile widened. $20,000. "Cole, pay up or get out." "You know I don't have that in cash." "Then I guess we'll be neighbors soon." "Course, I'm a reasonable man. Sign over the Cottonwood draw water rights, and I'll extend the loan." "No." Burke stood, adjusting his coat. "Think about it. You've got 2 weeks. He tipped his hat to Eliza. "Ma'am, enjoy the house while you can." After they left, Jacob slumped against the porch rail. 20,000. Might as well be 20 million. "How much can you raise?" Eliza asked. "Maybe 5,000 if I sell half the herd. But that would leave nothing for winter feeding." Miguel spoke up. "Boss, there's talk in town. Other small ranchers getting similar visits. Burke's calling in every note he can buy." "He's making his move," Jacob said, "consolidating the whole valley." That evening, as Eliza served supper, Nate Alvarez arrived. Jacob's old friend was trail-worn and dusty, his mail carrier's badge tarnished but visible. "Got your message," Nate said, accepting a plate gratefully. "Came as quick as I could." "Appreciate it. We've got trouble." "I also heard congratulations are in order." Jacob made introductions. Nate studied Eliza with intelligent eyes. "The lady from Philadelphia Burke's been fussing about ma'am. You've caused quite a stir." "Apparently so," Eliza said dryly. After supper, Jacob and Nate walked outside. Through the window, Eliza could see them talking intently, Nate gesturing toward town. When they returned, both men looked grim. "How bad?" she asked. "Burke's got federal connections now." Nate said, "There's talk of bringing in regulators to maintain order. Private army, more like." "We need allies," Jacob said. "The other ranchers, the townspeople who aren't in Burke's pocket." "Good luck with that. Tom Hendricks was liked when Burke burned him out." Nate shook his head. "There's got to be law somewhere," Eliza insisted. "A territorial marshal, someone—" "Nearest honest law is Judge Wickham in Denver, 300 miles and a mountain range away." They talked late into the night, planning and discarding ideas. Finally, Nate departed for town, promising to gather what information he could, alone with her new husband. Eliza felt the strangeness of their situation, married but not together but separate. "I'll check the stock," Jacob said, avoiding her eyes. "You should get some rest." "Jacob," she stopped him at the door. "We're going to fight this. Aren't we not run like the Hendricks family?" "I've never run from anything in my life. Even when it might be smarter to—" He almost smiled, especially then. After he left, Eliza climbed the stairs to her room, the same one she'd occupied since arriving. Her few possessions looked lost in the wardrobe. On the dresser sat a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a silver hair comb, delicate and beautiful. A note in Jacob's careful hand read, Every bride should have a wedding gift. Welcome to the Triple C, J. She held the comb up to catch the lamplight. Such a small gesture, but it spoke volumes about the man she'd married. Honorable enough to mark the occasion, respectful enough to keep his distance. Through the window, she watched him moving among the corrals, checking gates and water troughs, a lonely figure against the vast darkness of the valley. "You've got more than you think," she whispered. And Burke's about to learn that. The next morning brought a Chinook wind, unseasonably warm and dry. Old-timers said it meant trouble coming. Eliza was feeding chickens when she heard the bell at the main gate. A woman stood there, well-dressed but travel-worn. She was perhaps 30, with auburn hair and knowing eyes. Mrs. Cole, I'm Catherine Walsh. I believe you know my business partner, Silas Burke." Eliza's hand tightened on the feed bucket. "What do you want?" "To make you an offer. May I come in?" Against her better judgment, Eliza led the woman to the kitchen. Catherine Walsh moved like a cat, taking in every detail. "Charming," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "It must be quite a change from Philadelphia." "Get to the point." Catherine smiled. "Direct. I like that. Very well. Burke wants this ranch. You're in the way. I'm here to offer you a solution." "Which is?" $10,000. Cash. You convince your husband to sell, take the money, and leave the territory." "And if we refuse, then things become unpleasant." Catherine traced a pattern on the table. "You know what happened to the Hendricks family? Tragic, but accidents happen on the frontier, especially to women alone while their husbands are out working cattle." The threat hung between them like a drawn blade. "Get out," Eliza said quietly. "Think about it. 10,000 would set you up nicely somewhere else. San Francisco, perhaps, or back to Philadelphia." Catherine stood. "Burke's not an unreasonable man, but he's not patient either. You have 3 days." After she left, Eliza's hands shook as she cleaned up the coffee cups. The message was clear sell or burn, give in or die. When Jacob returned for lunch, she told him about the visit. His face went dark as thunder. "She threatened you, in my own house." "Our house," Eliza corrected. "And I'm not afraid of her." "You should be. Catherine Walsh isn't just Burke's partner. She's wanted in 3 states for everything from fraud to murder." "Then why isn't she in jail?" "Because she's very good at not getting caught, and because Burke protects her." That afternoon, Eliza did something that surprised even herself. She took Jacob's rifle from above the mantel and asked Miguel to teach her to shoot. "Are you sure about this, Senora?" "Very sure." They set up targets behind the barn. Eliza's first shots went wild, but she gritted her teeth and kept trying. By sunset, she could hit a can at 20 paces. "You're a natural," Miguel said admiringly. "I'm motivated," she corrected. Jacob found her cleaning the rifle that evening. "Planning to start a war?" "Planning to finish one if necessary." She met his eyes steadily. "I'm not Tom Hendricks. Jacob, I won't be driven off by threats, and I won't let them use me against you." Something shifted in his expression. "You know, when you first arrived, I thought I was protecting you. And now? Now I'm thinking we might be protecting each other." The Chinook wind howled around the house that night, rattling windows and nerves alike, somewhere in the darkness. Burke was planning his next move. But in the kitchen of the Triple C, Eliza Cole Hart cleaned her rifle and made her own plans. The little girl's grave on the hill was a reminder of what Burke would do to get what he wanted. But it was also a reminder that some things were worth fighting for. Some things were worth the risk. The church bells rang out across Dry Creek on a crisp November morning, calling the townspeople to something that hadn't happened in years, a public hearing. Father Doyle had offered his churchyard, the only neutral ground in a town increasingly divided between those who feared Burke and those who profited from him. Eliza adjusted her best bonnet as she and Jacob approached the gathering crowd. Nearly 100 people had assembled, ranchers and townspeople alike, their faces reflecting a mixture of hope and skepticism. "Surprised this many showed," Jacob murmured. "Desperation makes people brave," Eliza replied, noting how neighbors whispered among themselves, careful not to stand too close to anyone who might report back to Burke. Father Doyle stood on the church steps, his weathered face grave. Beside him, an unexpected figure, Judge Theodore Blackstone, the territorial circuit judge who wasn't due for another month. How did he get here? Miguel wondered aloud. "Nate," Jacob said simply. "Must have ridden hard to fetch him." Indeed. Nate Alvarez stood near the judge, dust still coating his clothes despite an obvious attempt to clean up. He caught Jacob's eye and nodded slightly. "Friends and neighbors," Father Doyle began, his voice carrying across the yard. "We're gathered to address grievances that have torn at the fabric of our community. Judge Blackstone has graciously agreed to hear testimony regarding recent disputes." "This is illegal," Deputy Reed pushed through the crowd, hand on his gun. "You can't hold court without proper notice." Judge Blackstone was a small man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Deputy Reed, is it? I'm not holding court. I'm simply listening to concerned citizens. Surely that's not illegal." Reed's face flushed. "Mr. Burke needs to be notified." "Then notify him," the judge said mildly. "The churchyard is open to all." As if summoned, Burke's carriage appeared. Flanked by armed riders, the crowd parted nervously as Burke descended, Catherine Walsh on his arm. They looked like prosperity itself, well-fed, well-dressed, radiating confidence. "Judge Blackstone," Burke said smoothly. "What a pleasant surprise. I heard you weren't due until December." "Plans change," the judge replied. "I received some rather urgent correspondence regarding this jurisdiction." Burke's eyes found Nate, and his smile tightened. "I see. Well, far be it from me to interfere with. What is this exactly?" "A hearing of grievances," Father Doyle said. "Perhaps you'd like to stay and listen." "I wouldn't miss it." The judge gestured to a makeshift witness chair. "Who wishes to speak first?" For a long moment, no one moved. Then Martha Hendricks stepped forward, her arm still bearing the scars from the fire. The crowd murmured as she took the chair. "State your name for the record." Judge Blackstone instructed. "Martha Hendricks, wife of Thomas Hendricks, mother of—" Her voice caught. "3 children. Was 3. She told her story simply, the dawn arrival of masked men, the demands for their water rights, the fire that followed their refusal. When she described finding Sarah in the smoke, several women in the crowd wept openly. "Did you recognize any of the men?" the judge asked gently. Martha's eyes found Burke. They wore masks, but one rode Pete Sawyer's bay mare. Everyone knows that horse. "Speculation and hearsay," Burke said loudly. "Where's your proof?" "Where's Pete Sawyer?" someone called out. "Haven't seen him since the fire." Burke's lawyer, a thin man named Clement, stood. "Your Honor, excuse me. Judge, this informal procedure has no legal standing. These accusations are being heard, not adjudicated." Judge Blackstone cut him off. "Continue. Mrs. Hendricks." One by one, others found their courage. Jim Morrison, no relation to the deceased Thomas, told of being beaten when he refused to sell water rights. The widow Perkins described threats against her if she continued selling eggs to Burke's enemies. Each story painted a picture of systematic intimidation. Then Eliza stood. "Your name?" the judge asked, though his eyes showed he knew. "Eliza Cole, formerly Eliza Hart of Philadelphia." "Ah, yes, the mail-order bride." Burke's voice dripped false sympathy. "How tragic that your intended died before your arrival." "My situation is well known," Eliza said calmly. "What's less known is what happened after." She produced the forged marriage contract Burke had tried to enforce. This document claims I agreed to marry Silas Burke. It's a forgery. That's a serious accusation. Clement protested. Yes, it is. Eliza handed the judge another paper. This is my actual correspondence with Thomas Morrison, including my letter to Father Doyle. Compare the handwriting. Judge Blackstone studied both documents. These appear to be written by different hands. Because Burke had someone forge my signature after Morrison died. Eliza continued. He's been trafficking in mail-order bride contracts, treating women like property to be bought and sold. Where's your proof? Burke demanded, his composure cracking slightly. Where's Lucy Stone? Eliza countered. She could testify about what happens to women who resist your employment offers. Oh wait, she's too frightened to leave your saloon. The woman works for me voluntarily. Under what contract the same kind you try to enforce on me? The crowd stirred restlessly. Many had wondered about the young women who appeared in Burke's establishments, but few had dared to question it openly. Furthermore, Eliza continued, pulling out more papers, these are letters from supposed husbands that have been arriving for other women. Notice anything familiar about the handwriting? Judge Blackstone examined them. They appear to be written by the same person. Because Burke's been luring women west with false promises, then claiming they owe him for travel expenses, room and board. It's debt bondage, pure and simple. Catherine Walsh stood abruptly. These accusations are slanderous. We run legitimate businesses. Like your legitimate business in Kansas. Nate Alvarez stepped forward. Or the one in Missouri that burned down with 2 people inside. Catherine went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Then you won't mind if I wire the authorities in those states? Judge Blackstone asked mildly. The crowd was buzzing now, people sharing stories they'd kept quiet for months. Burke's face had gone from red to purple. This is a circus, he roared. You have no authority here. Blackstone. Actually, I do. The judge produced a document. This morning, I swore in 6 federal marshals. They're waiting outside town with warrants for various individuals on charges ranging from mail fraud to conspiracy. The blood drained from Burke's face. Several of his men began edging toward their horses. However, Blackstone continued, I'm a reasonable man. The federal government is less interested in past crimes than in preventing future ones. Anyone willing to provide testimony about larger criminal operations might find clemency. You're trying to destroy me because I'm successful, Burke snarled. Because I brought prosperity to this worthless mudhole. You brought fear, Jacob said, speaking for the first time. You burned out families, killed a child, and call it business. Prove it. Prove any of it in a real court. I can... A new voice spoke from the crowd. Pete Sawyer emerged, looking haggard and frightened. I was there. Burke ordered us to burn the Hendricks place. Said to make sure they couldn't get out too quick. The crowd erupted. Burke lunged at Sawyer, but Jacob and Miguel restrained him. You're dead, Burke screamed. You're all dead, I own this town. Not anymore, Judge Blackstone said quietly. Deputy Reed, arrest Mr. Burke for assault and threatening a witness. Reed didn't move. I don't... Then you're relieved of duty. The judge nodded to the church door. Marshals. 6 men entered the yard, badges glinting. Burke's remaining men calculated odds and didn't like them, one by one. They raised their hands. This isn't over, Burke hissed as the marshals cuffed him. I have lawyers, connections, and I have testimony from your own man. Blackstone replied, plus what I suspect we'll find in your office safe. Catherine Walsh tried to slip away, but found May Thompson blocking her path with a very large cast-iron skillet. Going somewhere, dearie? May asked sweetly. The next hour was chaos as marshals arrested Burke's key men and secured evidence. Lucy Stone, seeing Burke in chains, finally found her voice and agreed to testify about the forced prostitution ring. Other women came forward with similar stories. It'll take weeks to sort this out. Judge Blackstone told Jacob and Eliza privately. But the immediate threat is over. Burke's assets will be frozen pending investigation. What about the loans he bought? Jacob asked. The notes he was calling in, obtained through criminal enterprise. They'll revert to the original terms with the original holders. The judge smiled slightly. Your ranch is safe, Mr. Cole. As the sun reached its zenith, the crowd began dispersing. Some looked relieved, others worried about what would come next. Burke's businesses employed many people, after all. We need to talk about that, Eliza said to Jacob. The town needs those jobs, just under better management. What are you thinking? A cooperative. The ranchers and townspeople could buy Burke's legitimate businesses, run them fairly. Jacob studied his wife with growing respect. You've got a head for business. I've got a head for survival, and this town needs to survive without Burke. Father Doyle approached, beaming. Now that was better than any sermon I could preach. Justice rolling down like waters. It's not over, Jacob warned. Burke has money, lawyers. He'll fight this. But he'll fight from jail, the priest replied. And this time, the whole valley stands against him. As they walked back to their wagon, Eliza slipped her hand into Jacob's. It was the first voluntary touch between them since their wedding. We did it, she said softly. You did it. That evidence about the forged contracts that changed everything. I had help. Nate brought more than just the judge. He brought letters from other women Burke had trapped. Testimonies from Kansas and Missouri. Still, you stood up there knowing Burke might retaliate. Someone had to. She squeezed his hand. Besides, I had backup. My husband's something of a dangerous man himself. I hear... Jacob almost smiled. Former dangerous man, now I'm just a rancher, who just faced down the most powerful man in the valley. We faced him down together. They reached the wagon where Miguel waited, grinning broadly. Senora, you were magnifica like an avenging angel. Just a cook who keeps good records, Eliza replied. But she was smiling. As they drove away, she looked back at the churchyard where federal marshals were still processing evidence. Burke's empire, built on fear and exploitation, had crumbled in a single morning. But something else had been built, a community willing to stand together, and perhaps, though neither would admit it yet, a real partnership between two people who'd started as strangers. Jacob, Eliza said as they headed home. Yes. That business arrangement we have, I've been thinking. He tensed slightly. Oh, maybe we could renegotiate some of the terms. Not all. She added quickly, seeing his expression. Just, maybe we could start with being friends. Friends, he tested the word. I'd like that. Good, because friends help each other, and we've got a town to rebuild. Lord help us. Miguel muttered good-naturedly. The Senora's got plans. As the Triple C Ranch came into view, Eliza felt something she hadn't experienced since leaving Philadelphia: hope, not just for survival, but for a future worth building. Burke was finished. The real work was just beginning. The dust storm struck just before midnight, turning the world into a howling void of sand and wind. Eliza woke to the sound of men shouting and horses screaming in panic. She threw on her wrapper and rushed downstairs to find Jacob already gone, the door standing open to the chaos outside. Through the swirling grit, she could see flames. The hay barn was burning. Fire all hands to the well, Miguel's voice cut through the storm. Eliza grabbed every bucket and pot she could find, joining the human chain passing water from well to flames. The wind drove sand into their eyes, noses, mouths, making it almost impossible to breathe. But they fought on, knowing that if the fire spread to the other buildings, they'd lose everything. Where's Jacob? She shouted to Jonas. Went to loose the horses, He passed another bucket. That fire didn't start natural. Through the chaos, riders appeared. May Thompson on her old mare, followed by several townsmen. Saw the glow from town. May dismounted, immediately joining the bucket line. Burke! Who else? Hank spat sand and water. He's out on bail, ain't he? They fought for hours, finally containing the blaze to just the hay barn. As dawn broke pale through the settling dust, they surveyed the damage. Half their winter feed was gone, but the house and stock were safe. Jacob emerged from the barn, covered in soot and ash. A cut on his forehead bled freely. Let me see that, Eliza said, but he waved her off. Check the men first. Some got burned pulling equipment out. She spent the next hour treating burns and smoke inhalation, using skills learned in Philadelphia's tenements. When she finally returned to Jacob, he was standing with Nate Alvarez, both men grim-faced. Found this nailed to the gate. Nate held up a paper. Wedding invitation. Eliza read it, her stomach turning. Sure. Mr. Silas Burke requests the honor of your presence at his marriage to Miss Eliza Hart, to be held at the Dry Creek Saloon at sunset tonight. Attendance mandatory for the bride. He's lost his mind, May said, reading over her shoulder. Or he's making his play, Jacob said quietly. Judge Blackstone left yesterday for Denver. New marshals won't arrive for a week. Burke knows he's running out of time. You can't seriously think I'd go, Eliza said. No, but he's forcing our hand. Either you show up or... Jacob gestured at the smoldering barn. Or he burns us out completely, Miguel finished. Not just us. Nate added, word in town is he's called in every gun he can find. Plans to restore order before federal help arrives. How many men? Jacob asked. 20, maybe 30, holed up at the saloon with enough ammunition to outfit an army. Eliza felt the weight of it all, the exhaustion from fighting fire all night, the fear of what Burke might do, the strange protective anger she felt for this ranch and these people who'd become family. We need a plan. She said, we need a miracle, Hank muttered. No, Eliza straightened, decision crystallizing. We need to give him what he wants, sort of. Jacob's head snapped toward her. Absolutely not. Hear me out. He wants a spectacle. Write a public claiming of his property. So we give him one, but not the way he expects. She outlined her idea quickly. It was dangerous, possibly foolish, but it might work. You're asking me to let you walk into his trap, Jacob said flatly. I'm asking you to trust me. She met his eyes steadily. The way I trusted you when you offered me a job, a home, a name. Trust me now. Something shifted in his expression, a recognition, perhaps, of her strength. What do you need? By afternoon, word had spread. Burke's wedding would proceed as announced, the saloon filled with his hired guns, while townspeople gathered in the street, compelled by curiosity and threats. Eliza stood in May's room above the inn, preparing for the strangest performance of her life. May helped her into a white dress, not a wedding gown, but a simple white cotton that suggested innocence. You sure about this? Honey? No. Eliza pinned up her hair with trembling fingers. But Burke made one mistake. He thinks I'm the same frightened woman who stumbled off that stage 2 months ago. And you're not. I'm terrified, but I'm not alone anymore. She picked up a white veil, gossamer thin. Is everyone in position? Jacob's got men around the saloon. Father Doyle's ready. That package from Denver came on the noon stage, just like Nate promised. Then let's end this. The walk to the saloon felt endless. People lined the streets, some sympathetic, others merely curious. Deputy Reed waited at the saloon door, uncomfortable but still wearing his badge. Ma'am, he said awkwardly. Mr. Burke's waiting inside. The saloon had been transformed into a grotesque parody of a chapel. White bunting draped the bar. Chairs arranged in rows. Burke stood at the front in his best suit, looking like a satisfied spider in his web. His men lined the walls, hands near their weapons. "My dear Eliza," Burke spread his arms. "Come, don't be shy. Your husband awaits." "I'm already married," she said clearly, letting her voice carry. A sham ceremony, easily annulled when the bride was coerced. He produced a document. "I have statements from witnesses saying you were forced into marriage with Cole." "Interesting." Eliza moved closer, noting how his men relaxed slightly. A frightened woman was no threat. "And these witnesses would be concerned citizens who saw Cole's manipulation of a vulnerable woman." She was close enough now to see the madness in his eyes, the fury of a man who'd built an empire on fear, only to watch it crumble. "Tell me, Silas," she said conversationally, "why the elaborate show? Why not just take what you want, like you always do?" "Because I'm a civilized man. I do things properly." His smile was terrible. "Besides, public ceremonies are so binding, so many witnesses to your willing participation." "I see." She fingered the veil she carried. "And if I refuse?" "Then accidents happen. Your ranch burns. Your husband meets with misfortune, one by one. Everyone you care about suffers until you see reason." The saloon door opened. Father Doyle entered, followed by several townspeople. "Ah." Father Burke clapped his hands, just in time to perform the ceremony. "I think not," the priest said calmly. "You'll do as you're told, or what you'll burn down a church, murder a priest." Father Doyle smiled grimly. "Even your bought judges might balk at that." Burke's face darkened. "Get out!" "Actually, we're here on official business." A woman stepped from behind Father Doyle Judge Patricia Morrison, one of the territory's first female judges, appointed just months ago. "You have no jurisdiction here," Burke snarled. "Federal appointment says otherwise." Judge Morrison produced her credentials. "I received some very interesting documents about your activities. Mr. Burke, mail fraud across state lines is federal jurisdiction." The room tensed, hands moving to weapons. This was the moment everything balanced on a knife's edge. Then Eliza laughed. It wasn't planned, but the absurdity of it all, Burke in his wedding suit, his empire crumbling, still trying to force a marriage like something from a penny dreadful, struck her as cosmically ridiculous. "You still don't understand, do you?" She stepped closer to Burke, no longer afraid. "You think you can own people, buy them, sell them, force them into your will, but you can't." "Shut up," Burke growled. "No." She raised the veil she'd been carrying. "You want your bride. Here she is." She draped the veil over her head, and for a moment, she looked exactly like what he'd wanted: a submissive, controllable woman hiding behind white lace. Then Jacob's voice rang out from the back of the room. "That's my wife you're threatening, Burke." Burke spun to find Jacob standing there, not alone, flanked by ranchers, townsmen, even some of Burke's own former employees who'd had enough. "You brought an army to my wedding," Burke laughed wildly. "How touching." "Not an army." Jacob moved through the crowd toward Eliza. "Witnesses." He reached her side, and in a gesture that would be remembered in Dry Creek legend, he took hold of her veil, that symbol of hidden femininity, of ownership and control, and tore it away with one sharp motion. "There," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "No veils between us, no lies, no force, no contracts written in fear." He turned to face the crowd. "This is my wife. She came here of her own free will, works beside me of her own choice, and stands here now not because anyone forces her, but because she's got more courage than any 10 men. Pretty words. Burke sneered, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. His kingdom was built on fear and shadows. This public defiance, this tearing away of pretense, was not in his playbook. True words, Eliza said. She held up the torn veil. "You see this is what you offer hiding, shame, ownership. but I choose differently." She took Jacob's hand. "I choose partnership. I choose to stand in the light, not hide behind veils of your making." "Enough," Burke pulled a gun. "I'll have what's mine or see you all burn." Several things happened at once. Jacob moved to shield Eliza. Burke's men reached for weapons. The crowd surged backward. And Judge Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. "Federal marshals now!" The windows shattered as men repelled and not local lawmen, but federal agents who'd arrived on the noon stage with the judge. Burke's hired guns, faced with real authority, threw down their weapons. Burke himself stood frozen, gun wavering. His grand moment collapsed into farce. "It's over, Silas," Father Doyle said gently. "Let it go." For a moment, rage and madness warred in Burke's eyes. Then Catherine Walsh spoke from the doorway. "Don't be a fool, Silas. We can fight charges, but not if you murder federal officers." Slowly, Burke lowered the gun. The marshals moved in, efficient and professional. As they cuffed him, he looked at Eliza with pure hatred. "This isn't over." "Yes," she said simply. "It is." They led him away, along with Catherine and his key lieutenants. The saloon emptied slowly, people unsure what had just happened. In the space of minutes, Burke's reign had ended not with violence, but with truth, a woman refusing to hide, a community standing together. Outside, as sunset painted the sky, Eliza found herself shaking. Jacob's arm came around her, solid and real. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen," he said quietly. "Or the most foolish. Maybe both." He touched the torn veil she still held. "When I ripped this away, you gave me what I needed. A moment of truth so clear even Burke couldn't twist it." She looked up at him. "Thank you for trusting me." "Eliza," he paused, searching for words. "This marriage of ours, it started as protection, convenience, but somewhere along the way—" "I know," she smiled, really smiled. "Me too." Mae Thompson bustled up, beaming. "Well, if that wasn't better than a theater show." The look on Burke's face when those marshals came through the windows. "Judge Morrison's idea," Eliza admitted. "She has a flair for the dramatic." Speaking of which, the judge joined them, looking satisfied. "We'll need your testimony in federal court, but I think Mr. Burke will be enjoying federal hospitality for quite some time." As the crowd dispersed, Eliza and Jacob walked slowly back toward the inn. The torn veil fluttered in her hand like a captured bird. "What will you do with that?" Jacob asked. She considered. "Keep it, I think, as a reminder." "Of Burke?" "Of the moment I stopped hiding." She looked at him sideways. "The moment we stopped pretending." "About that." He stopped walking. "Eliza, I know we agreed to a business arrangement, but—" She silenced him with a finger to his lips. "Jacob Cole, are you trying to court your own wife?" A slow smile spread across his face, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Would that be so strange? Not strange at all. She stood on her toes and kissed him properly, there in the middle of Main Street, with half the town watching. "But you should know I expect to be courted properly. Flowers, sweet talk, the whole thing." "I think I can manage that." They walked on, her hand in his, the white veil forgotten on the ground behind them. Ahead lay the Triple C, no longer just a refuge, but truly home. In the last light of day, Dry Creek looked different, cleaner somehow, as if Burke's shadow had been physically lifted. There would be challenges ahead, rebuilding and healing. But for now, for this moment, a woman who'd traveled 2,000 miles to be a bride had found something better than she'd dreamed. She'd found a partner, a purpose, and the courage to stand unveiled before the world. The veil drifted on the evening breeze, caught on a sage bush, and slowly tore to ribbons, a ghost of old fears scattered to the desert wind. The drought had been building for weeks. But Burke's final act of vengeance made it catastrophic. 3 days after his arrest, every well feeding the small ranches went dry, simultaneously poisoned with lye and dead animals thrown down the shafts. Only the deeper wells survived, and those were on Burke's former properties or the larger spreads like the Triple C. Jacob stood at their own well, hauling up bucket after bucket of precious water. The cattle were already showing signs of thirst, bunching near the empty troughs with plaintive lowing. "How long can we last?" Eliza asked, helping him pour water into barrels. 2 weeks, maybe 3 if we cut the rations. He wiped sweat from his brow. But that's not the real problem. It's the small ranchers, the Millers, the Johnsons, the Lopez family. They've got nothing. Then we share. We don't have enough to share. Eliza, not for long. She looked across the valley toward Cottonwood Draw, the creek that wound through the low ground, their ace in the hole, the water rights Burke had killed to obtain. "Then we don't stay here," she said. "We move the cattle to Cottonwood Draw. That's 15 miles through open country. In this heat, we'd lose half the herd. Not if we go at night, and not if we're not alone." By sunset, word had spread. Every rancher facing ruin gathered at the Triple C, 20 families in all. Their combined herds nearly 3,000 head. It would be the largest unofficial cattle drive in the valley's history, and the most desperate. "It's madness," Tom Hendricks said. He'd returned after Burke's arrest, trying to rebuild. "Moving that many cattle at night through rough country. It's that or watch them die." Jacob countered. "Cottonwood Draw has enough water for all of us, but only if we can get there." "Burke's men poisoned the wells." Samuel Miller spat. "What's to stop them from being waiting at the draw?" "They're scattered," Nate reported. "Most ran when Burke got arrested, but there's still a hardcore group holed up at his ranch. Maybe 15 men, led by his foreman, Wade Garrison. Garrison's mean as a snake." Jonas said quietly, "Won't give up easy." "Then we go around them," Eliza suggested, studying the rough map Miguel had drawn. "Take the long route through Devil's Canyon." "That's 20 miles of rough trail," Hank protested. "Some of it ain't barely wide enough for a horse." "But it avoids Garrison's men." She looked around the room at tired, desperate faces. "We leave at midnight. Full moon tonight, we'll have light. Everyone brings what water they can carry. We set up a field kitchen at Willow Bend, the halfway point. Nobody travels alone." "And if Garrison figures out what we're doing?" Tom asked. Jacob checked his rifle. "Then we deal with it." The preparations were frantic. Every available container was filled with water. Eliza organized the women into cooking teams, preparing food that would last the journey. Children were assigned to ride with the supply wagons, keeping them safe in the center of the drive. As midnight approached, Eliza found Jacob saddling his gray stallion. "Your riding point?" she asked. "Miguel and I know the trail best." He adjusted the rifle scabbard. "You'll be with the wagons." "Actually," she showed him the pistol belted at her waist, "I'm riding flank with Jonas. Someone needs to keep the Millers' cattle from scattering. They're spooked already." "Eliza." "We're partners, remember, in everything." He pulled her close, a gesture that still surprised them both. "When this is over, when we've got the herd safe, we'll have that courtship you promised," she finished. "But first, we save our valley." The moon rose full and bright as 3,000 cattle began to move. It was an eerie sight, a river of horns and hide flowing through the silver-lit landscape, guided by riders who communicated in whistles and hand signals to avoid alerting potential enemies. Eliza rode alongside the herd, dust coat covering her dress, hat pulled low. The Millers' longhorns were skittish, wanting to bolt at every shadow. She and Jonas worked constantly to keep them bunched with the main herd. "Never thought I'd see the day," Jonas said quietly during a brief rest. "Whole valley working together like this." "Crisis has a way of clarifying things," Eliza replied, sharing her canteen with him. "No, ma'am, it's more than crisis. It's having someone show us we could—" He nodded toward the lead where Jacob rode. "Him standing up to Burke, sure. But you standing up there in that saloon, tearing away pretense that changed things, made folks remember they had backbone." 3 hours into the drive, trouble came. A rider galloped in from the rear guard, young Tommy Hendricks, Tom's eldest. "Riders following us," he gasped. "Maybe 10, moving fast." Jacob appeared out of the darkness. "How far back?" "Mile, maybe less." "Garrison." Jacob turned to Miguel. "Keep them moving. Push harder if you have to. Jonas, get 5 men and come with me. We'll discourage pursuit." "I'm coming too," Eliza said. "No." "Yes." Her tone brooked no argument. "I can shoot, and another gun might make the difference." They rode back along their trail, taking position on a rise overlooking the path. Soon enough, riders appeared Garrison's men, following the clear trail left by 3,000 cattle. "That's far enough," Jacob called out. The riders pulled up, spreading into a skirmish line. Wade Garrison rode forward, a brutal-looking man with scars marking his face. "Cole, figured it was you stirring up trouble." "No trouble, just moving cattle to water. Same as any rancher's right. Except you're moving everyone's cattle. To water, mister. Burke particular wanted kept private." "Burke's in federal custody," Jacob reminded him. "His wants don't matter anymore." "Maybe, maybe not." Garrison smiled unpleasantly. "Man like Burke has lawyers. Might be out sooner than you think. He'll remember who stayed loyal." "And who poisoned Wells?" Eliza called out. "That's a federal crime too. Garrison, terrorism, they're calling it." Garrison's eyes found her. "The bride? Heard about your little show at the saloon. Burke's got special plans for you when he gets back. Only plans Burke's making involve what to eat in federal prison." Jonas said. The standoff stretched taut. Then one of Garrison's men whispered urgently, pointing back toward town. A dust cloud was rising in the moonlight, riders coming fast. "Expecting company?" Jacob asked mildly. Judge Morrison appeared with 10 federal marshals, their badges glinting in the moonlight. "Mr. Garrison, heard you might be interfering with lawful movement of livestock." "Just checking on our neighbor's welfare," Garrison said smoothly. "How thoughtful. Well, we'll be checking on them too, all the way to Cottonwood Draw." The judge smiled. "Unless you'd prefer to discuss your role in the well poisonings, I have several witnesses ready to testify." Garrison weighed his options, then wheeled his horse around. "This ain't over." "It never is." The judge agreed, "but it is for tonight." As Garrison's men retreated, Eliza felt the tension drain from her shoulders. They'd won this round, but the night was far from over. They caught up with the herd at Willow Bend, where organized chaos reigned. May Thompson and the cooking teams had set up field kitchens, providing coffee and food to exhausted riders. Children slept in wagons while their parents took turns guarding and driving. "Lost about 50 head in Skeleton Gulch," Miguel reported. "Trail narrowed sudden-like, but most made it through." "The Hendricks milk cow went lame," May added. "But Doc Winters is tending her. Says she'll make it if we go slow." "How's our water holding?" "Getting low, but we're past halfway." As dawn approached, they faced the hardest part, Devil's Canyon proper. The trail wound between towering rocks, sometimes barely wide enough for 2 cattle abreast. One spooked animal could cause a stampede that would kill hundreds. "We need absolute quiet," Jacob instructed the gathered riders. "Walk them through slow and steady. No sudden movements." It took 3 grueling hours. Eliza's throat was parched, her hands raw from holding reins. But step by step, they threaded 3,000 cattle through the eye of a needle. When they finally emerged onto the broad meadows of Cottonwood Draw, with the creek glinting in the morning sun, a ragged cheer went up. Cattle that hadn't drunk properly in days rushed toward the water, spreading along miles of creek bank. "We did it," Tom Hendricks said wonderingly. We actually did it. Together, his wife Martha added, holding their boys close. Jacob found Eliza watering her horse, swaying with exhaustion. You were magnificent, he said simply. I was terrified. She leaned against him, too tired to care who saw. But it was worth it. Look at them, Jacob. All these families, safe because neighbors helped neighbors. It's a start. But Garrison was right, this isn't over. We need to organize, make this permanent. A water cooperative, Eliza suggested. Equal shares for every family, decisions made jointly. You've been thinking about this. All night, Burke ruled through control. We survived through cooperation. Father Doyle rode up, somehow looking fresh despite the night's ordeal. Folks are gathering for a Thanksgiving prayer. Thought you might want to say a few words after. As the sun climbed higher, the entire population of the drive gathered by the creek, after Father Doyle's prayer. Jacob stood before them, Eliza at his side. We've proven something here, he began. Proven that we're stronger together than any man who'd rule through fear. This water belongs to all of us now. I'm proposing we formalize it, create a Cottonwood Water Association, with every family holding equal votes. What about your rights? Sam Miller asked. You held them legal before Burke? I did, and now I'm sharing them, because a valley where neighbors thrive is worth more than any paper. The vote was unanimous, as families began setting up temporary camps along the creek, planning for the future. Eliza and Jacob walked alone beside the water. The exhaustion was bone deep, but satisfaction ran deeper. You gave away a fortune in water rights, she observed. I gained something better, a community, a future. He stopped walking, took her hands. A partner who rides into danger beside me. Always, she promised. About that courtship I owe you. She laughed, tired and happy. Mr. Cole, I just helped drive 3,000 cattle through the night while fighting off outlaws. I think we might be past the flowers and sweet talk stage. Never. He pulled a somewhat crushed wildflower from his pocket, picked. She realized, somewhere on the trail while thinking of her, Eliza Hart Cole, you are the bravest, stubbornest, most magnificent woman I've ever known, and I'm falling in love with you. Falling. She took the flower, tucked it behind her ear. Jacob Cole, I fell in love with you somewhere between the chicken and dumplings and standing up to Burke. I just took a while to admit it. He kissed her then, there by the creek they'd fought so hard to reach, with 3,000 cattle and 20 families as witnesses. When they broke apart, applause echoed across the valley. Looks like the whole territory knows now, May called out cheerfully. About time, too. As they walked back to help with the camps, Eliza marveled at how much had changed. She'd come west as a mail-order bride, desperate and alone. Now she was part of something bigger, a community forged in adversity, a partnership born of respect, a love built on choice rather than necessity. What are you thinking? Jacob asked. That Burke was wrong. He thought he could own people, control them through fear and deprivation. She gestured at the families settling along the creek, children playing in the shallows while their parents planned irrigation ditches and shared grazing. But you can't own the human spirit, and you can't stop people who stand together. Speaking of standing together, he pointed toward the rise where riders approached Judge Morrison and her marshals, but also wagons loaded with supplies. Heard you might need some help out here. The judge called. The federal government's approved emergency aid for victims of well poisoning. Thought you might know how to distribute it. As the wagons rolled in with food, tools, and hope, Eliza realized their victory was complete. Not because they'd defeated one man, but because they'd discovered themselves, their courage, their community, their capacity to choose love over fear. The sun climbed towards noon, hot but not oppressive now that water flowed freely. And in the valley of Cottonwood Draw, 20 families began building something new, not an empire of fear, but a community of choice. The drive was over. The real journey had just begun. The courthouse in Denver stood 3 stories tall, an imposing edifice of red sandstone that seemed to judge all who entered. Eliza adjusted her best traveling dress, a deep green wool that brought out her eyes and tried to calm her nerves. Beside her, Jacob looked uncomfortable in his city clothes, though he wore them well. "Biggest building I've ever been in," Miguel admitted, craning his neck to see the ceiling. They'd brought witnesses: Miguel May Thompson, Nate Alvarez, Father Doyle, and Tom Hendricks, the federal prosecutor. A sharp young man named William Cartwright had insisted on depositions from everyone. "Remember," Cartwright instructed them, "Burke's lawyers will try to paint him as a legitimate businessman persecuted by jealous competitors. Stay calm, stick to facts, and don't let them rattle you." The first day of testimony went smoothly. Documents were presented: the forged marriage contracts, evidence of well poisoning, testimony about the Hendricks fire. Judge Patricia Morrison, presiding with federal authority, kept tight control of the proceedings. But on the second day, Burke's defense team revealed their strategy. Mrs. Cole, Burke's lawyer, a silver-tongued man named Pemberton, approached the witness stand where Eliza sat. "You came west as a mail-order bride, correct?" "I answered an advertisement for marriage." "Yes." "A desperate woman, fleeing poverty and scandal in Philadelphia?" Cartwright objected, but Pemberton pressed on. "Isn't it true you worked in a factory after failing to maintain a boarding house that you left under questionable circumstances?" Eliza's chin lifted. "I left because my employer made unwanted advances." "Is that what you mean by questionable?" "So you say." "And then you arrived here, discovered your intended was dead, and immediately attached yourself to the wealthiest available man." "I worked for Mr. Cole as a cook." "Until you married him quite conveniently, just as my client attempted to enforce a legal contract." "A forged contract," Eliza stated firmly. "Allegedly forged. But isn't it possible, Mrs. Cole, that you've simply traded up? That this entire prosecution is your way of eliminating a rival for your husband's affections?" Jacob started to rise, but Eliza's steady voice stopped him. "Mr. Pemberton, I've been poor, I've been desperate, I've made hard choices to survive, but I've never sold my soul or my body, and I've never stood by while innocent people suffered." She looked directly at Burke. "Your client burns out families, poisons wells, and treats women like cattle. If that's his idea of business, then yes, I'm proud to stand against him." The courtroom buzzed until Judge Morrison called for order. The trial continued for 3 days. Each witness told their story: the intimidation, the violence, the systematic attempt to control the valley's resources. Burke sat through it all with a slight smile, as if enjoying a private joke. Then, on the 4th day, everything changed. "The defense calls Catherine Walsh," Pemberton announced. Eliza felt Jacob tense beside her. Catherine had been Burke's partner in crime, arrested with him. Why would the defense call her? Catherine took the stand looking elegant despite her time in custody. She smoothed her skirts and smiled at the prosecutor. "Miss Walsh," Pemberton began, "you've been offered immunity in exchange for testimony, correct?" "I have." "Please tell the court about your relationship with Silas Burke." Catherine's testimony was devastating not for the prosecution, but for Burke. She painted herself as another victim, a woman forced into criminal activities by Burke's threats and manipulation. Every crime was his idea, his execution. She was merely a helpless pawn. "He threatened to ruin me if I didn't help," she said, dabbing at her eyes. "I was terrified." But then she went further. "So, Mr. Burke had grand plans. The water rights were just the beginning. He spoke of controlling shipping routes, of building an empire. He had maps, documents showing which ranches to take, which families to drive out." "And these documents?" Pemberton asked smoothly. "Hidden at the Garrison Ranch, where Wade and his men are still holding out." The implication was clear evidence that could either damn Burke completely or potentially implicate others. Depending on how it was interpreted, Catherine was offering the prosecution a gift, but one that came with danger. Judge Morrison called a recess. In the hallway, Prosecutor Cartwright pulled Jacob and Eliza aside. "This changes things. If those documents exist, we need them. But Garrison's ranch is a fortress. He's got 15 men, maybe more." "The federal marshals," Eliza began, "are mostly tied up here. I can spare 5 men. No more." Cartwright looked grim. "It would help if someone who knew the area could guide them." "I'll go," Jacob said immediately. "We'll go," Eliza corrected. "You'll need someone who can identify the relevant documents. I've seen Burke's handwriting, his coding system." "Absolutely not." Jacob said, "It's too dangerous." "Everything we've done has been dangerous. This is no different." They argued, but Eliza held firm. Finally, a compromise was reached. She would go as far as the outer perimeter, help plan the approach, but stay back during any confrontation. They left that night, riding hard with 5 federal marshals and Miguel, who refused to be left behind. The familiar landscape looked different under stars, every shadow potentially hiding Garrison scouts. "There," Miguel pointed to lights in the distance. "The Garrison place. It was less a ranch than a compound main house, bunkhouse and barn arranged in a defensive square. Guards patrolled the perimeter. "We need a distraction," Marshal Stevens, the lead federal agent, mused. "Something to draw them out." "Fire," Eliza suggested quietly. "Set fire to the hayshed on the north side. They'll rush to fight it. Burke's trained them to fear fire above all else, after what he did to others. And while they're fighting the fire, 2 men slip into the house, find the documents." "I'll go," Jacob volunteered. "So will I," Eliza said. When he started to protest, she cut him off. "I know what we're looking for. You don't— 10 minutes in and out, that's all." The plan was risky but simple. At midnight, Miguel and 1 marshal set the controlled fire just enough to raise alarm without endangering anyone. As predicted, men poured from the bunkhouse, rushing to fight the flames. Jacob and Eliza slipped through the shadows to the main house. The back door was locked, but Jacob made quick work of it. Inside, they moved swiftly to Burke's office. "His desk," Eliza whispered, going straight to it. The drawers were locked, but she'd learned a few things in her desperate years. A hairpin in patience opened them. Inside were exactly what Catherine had promised: maps marking every water source in 3 counties. Lists of ranchers with their debts and vulnerabilities noted. Correspondence with corrupt officials. "This is enough to hang him," Jacob breathed. Not hang, but certainly imprison for a very long time. Eliza stuffed documents into the satchel they'd brought. "Wait, there's something else." A hidden compartment in the bottom drawer. Inside, more papers, but these were different. Marriage contracts, dozens of them, with women's names from all over the country, and photographs, young women, some looking frightened, others defiant. Each photo had notes on the back: arrived from Ohio, sold to Brewster. From Georgia, working at Palace Saloon. Denver. "Dear God," Eliza whispered. "He was trafficking women all over the territory." "Take them all," Jacob said grimly. "Every family deserves to know what happened to their daughters." They were almost to the door when it burst open. Wade Garrison stood there, gun drawn. "Figured it might be you," he said. "Saw the fire for what it was, a diversion." "It's over. Garrison," Jacob said, moving to shield Eliza. "The federal marshals are here. Surrender now, and maybe you'll get leniency. Or I shoot you both and disappear into Mexico with Burke's gold." "What gold?" Eliza asked, genuinely curious despite the gun pointed at them. Garrison grinned. "Hidden in the barn. Enough to live like kings. Burke never trusted banks." "And you never trusted Burke," Jacob observed. "That's why you're still here when the smart ones ran. waiting to grab the gold when the heat died down. Smart man. Too bad you won't live to... The gunshot was deafening in the small room, but it was Garrison who staggered, looking surprised at the spreading red stain on his shoulder. Behind him, Mae Thompson stood with a smoking derringer. "Thought you might need help," she said calmly. "Never did like leaving things to menfolk." The marshals rushed in. Having heard the shot, Garrison was disarmed and arrested, the gold in the barn confiscated. As dawn broke, they loaded the evidence and headed back to Denver. The rest of the trial was almost anticlimactic, faced with the mountain of evidence, including proof of human trafficking across state lines. Burke's lawyers advised him to plead guilty in exchange for avoiding capital charges. He was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Catherine Walsh, despite her immunity deal, was sentenced to 10 years when additional evidence showed she was far from the innocent victim she'd claimed. As they stood on the courthouse steps after the verdict, Eliza felt a mix of exhaustion and elation. "It's really over," she said. "This part is," Jacob agreed. "But there's still work to do. Those women in the photographs, their families need to know. Some might still be alive, needing help." "We'll find them," Eliza promised. "All of them." Judge Morrison approached, smiling. "Mr. and Mrs. Cole, the federal government owes you a debt. Your courage exposed a trafficking ring we've been trying to crack for years." "We just wanted our valley safe," Jacob said. "Nevertheless, there's a reward for information leading to the conviction of human traffickers. $20,000. She handed them an envelope. "I believe you'll put it to good use." On the train back to Dry Creek, Eliza leaned against Jacob's shoulder, watching the landscape roll by. 20,000, she mused. Enough to buy seed for every farmer Burke burned out. Maybe start a school fund for the children. Already planning to give it away. Not give, invest in our community, our future. She looked up at him. Our family. He stilled. Eliza. I'm not certain yet, but May thinks, that is, I might be... She blushed. It's too early to know for sure. Jacob's hand found hers, squeezing gently. If you are. Then we'll raise them in a valley where justice means something, where neighbors help neighbors, where no one owns anyone else. Sounds like paradise. No, she corrected. It sounds like home. As the train carried them back to Dry Creek, back to the Triple C and their life together, Eliza thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a desperate mail-order bride to a woman who'd helped bring down a criminal empire. From a business arrangement to a love built on respect and shared courage. Outside the window, the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of hope, and for the first time since stepping off that stagecoach months ago, Eliza Hart Cole felt truly, completely free. The trial was over. The healing could begin. And in a valley where water now flowed freely for all, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way looked forward to whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. Together. Spring came early to the valley that year, painting the sage with purple blooms and filling Cottonwood Creek with snowmelt from the mountains. The communal well drilling project was nearly complete, with 3 new deep wells serving the families who'd lost their water to Burke's poisoning. Eliza stood in the doorway of the new building on Main Street, her hand resting on her growing belly. The sign above read, The Vale and Lantern Inn and Restaurant, in fresh blue paint. Mae Thompson bustled past with an armload of curtains. Don't just stand there gawking, Mae chided gently. We open in 2 days. It had been Eliza's idea to create something from the ashes of Burke's empire. The old saloon had been transformed into a respectable establishment. A place where travelers could find clean beds and good meals, where townspeople could gather without fear. The tables arrived, Miguel called from the street, directing a wagon loaded with furniture. Jacob appeared at her elbow, dusty from overseeing construction of the new schoolhouse. You should be resting. I've been resting all winter. The baby's not due for 2 months yet. She leaned into his embrace. Besides, I want everything perfect for the opening. The transformation of Dry Creek had been remarkable, with Burke's properties distributed among his victims as restitution. New businesses had sprung up. The Hendricks family now ran the general store. Jonas had started a leather shop. The Lopez family operated a bakery that filled the morning air with the scent of fresh bread. Mrs. Cole? A young woman approached hesitantly. She was perhaps 19, with auburn hair and tired eyes. I'm Sarah Walsh. I heard... That is, someone said you might have information about my sister Emma. Eliza's heart clenched. They'd been tracking down the women from Burke's files all winter, reuniting some with families, helping others start fresh. Come inside. Dear, let's talk privately. An hour later. Sarah left with tears of relief her sister was alive, working as a seamstress in San Francisco. Eliza had already sent word and funds for Emma's return journey if she chose. How many more? Jacob asked, finding her in the kitchen testing recipes. 3 we haven't located yet. Nate thinks one might be in Oregon territory. She stirred the stew thoughtfully. We'll find them all eventually. You've become the unofficial mayor of Dry Creek, you know. She laughed. Hardly. I just help where I can. That's what I mean. He tasted the stew, made an appreciative noise. This is what you're serving opening night. Among other things, I want to show that good food doesn't require fancy ingredients, just care and skill. The opening of the Veil and Lantern drew the whole valley. Father Doyle blessed the establishment, making pointed remarks about transformation and redemption. Judge Morrison, who'd stayed to oversee the distribution of Burke's assets, raised the first toast. To new beginnings, she declared, and to the courage of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The evening was a blur of serving, greeting, and celebrating. Eliza had hired 2 of the rescued women as staff. They moved efficiently through the crowded room, no longer hiding but standing proud in their new lives. Remember when you first walked into my kitchen? Old Hank asked, accepting a plate of chicken and dumplings. Thought we'd died and gone to heaven after that first meal. You were all so grateful for basic food. Eliza smiled. Made my job easy. Weren't just the food. Jonas added, was having someone care enough to make it good. As the evening wound down, Jacob stood and called for attention. Friends, neighbors a year ago. This valley lived in fear. Tonight, we celebrate in freedom. We've proven that community is stronger than tyranny, that courage can overcome oppression. But most importantly, we've shown that when good people stand together, no evil can prevail. Hear, hear, the crowd cheered. I also have an announcement, he continued, his eyes finding Eliza. As you may have noticed, come summer the Triple C will have a new addition. We're hoping for a future rancher, though Eliza insists it might be a future chef. Laughter rippled through the room. Along with congratulations, Mae Thompson wiped tears, muttering about finally having grandbabies to spoil. Later, as they cleaned up, Nate arrived with a special delivery, a package from Philadelphia. What's this? Eliza asked, puzzled. Open it, Jacob urged. Inside was a legal document and a letter. Eliza read aloud. Dear Mrs. Cole, we represent the estate of Mr. Josiah Hartford of Philadelphia. Our research indicates you are his closest living relative, Mr. Hartford, whom you knew as the elderly man who frequented your boarding house kitchen. Passed away last month. He has left his entire estate to you. Quote, to the young woman who showed kindness to a lonely old man and made the best cornbread east of the Mississippi. The estate consists of $12,000 and a small property on Walnut Street. Eliza sat down heavily. Old Mr. Hartford. He always said my cornbread reminded him of his mother's. $12,000. Mae breathed. That's a fortune. That's a school, Eliza said firmly. A proper school with a real teacher. Maybe 2. Books, supplies, everything our children need. Eliza, Jacob started. No, listen, we've been given so much. The reward money. Now this, it's meant to be shared. She looked around the room at faces that had become family. Every child in this valley will have an education. That's how we truly defeat men like Burke, by raising children who can think, read, question, who know their worth isn't determined by someone else's greed. Within a month, the Dry Creek School was under construction, with lodgings for teachers and a library that would serve the whole community. 2 teachers from back east had already accepted positions, drawn by the promise of a community that valued education. The baby came early, on a night when thunderstorms rolled across the valley. Eliza labored through the storm with May and Doc Winters attending, while Jacob paced the hallway like a caged cougar. It's a girl, May announced at dawn. Perfect as a peach and twice as sweet. Jacob was allowed in to find Eliza exhausted but radiant, cradling a tiny bundle. Meet Anna Rose Cole, she said softly. Named for your first Anna, with my mother's name as well, past and future joined. Jacob touched the baby's tiny fist with one finger, his eyes suspiciously wet. She's beautiful, like her mother. She's strong, Eliza corrected. Listen to those lungs. She'll make herself heard in this world. As summer progressed, life settled into new rhythms. The Vale and Lantern became the valley's gathering place. The school rose brick by brick. Wells flowed clear and free. The Cottonwood Water Association met monthly, making decisions by vote rather than decree. One evening, as Eliza served the dinner crowd with Anna Rose sleeping peacefully in a basket behind the counter, Lucy Stone entered hesitantly. She'd testified at Burke's trial but then disappeared. Lucy, Eliza embraced her. We've been worried. I needed time, Lucy said quietly. To figure out who I was without all that, I've been learning telegraphing in Denver. Got certified last week. Oh, that's wonderful. Thing is, I heard Dry Creek needs a telegraph operator. Thought maybe, if folks could forgive. There's nothing to forgive, Eliza said firmly. You're a survivor, same as all of us. The job's yours if you want it. By autumn, Dry Creek had transformed from a town ruled by fear into a thriving community. The Harvest Festival drew people from 3 counties, showcasing what cooperation could achieve. Eliza stood with Jacob watching couples dance in the street, Anna Rose gurgling happily in her father's arms. The baby had his eyes and her mother's determined chin. Regrets? Jacob asked softly. About what? Coming west, that stagecoach robbery seems like a lifetime ago. It was. She smiled, remembering the frightened woman who'd hidden behind a handkerchief in a dust storm. That Eliza Hart died somewhere on the trail. Eliza Cole was born from her ashes. Poetic. True. She nodded toward the crowd, the Hendricks children playing with hoops, Miguel dancing with the schoolteacher, May holding court with her stories, Lucy working the new telegraph with quiet pride. We all died a little under Burke's reign, and we all chose to be reborn as something better. The preacher would say that's mighty close to blasphemy, Jacob teased. The preacher would say it's redemption, Father Doyle corrected, joining them with a cup of May's apple cider. The good book's full of such transformations. Saul to Paul, darkness to light, fear to freedom, as if summoned by the talk of transformation. Catherine Walsh appeared at the edge of the crowd. She'd served 2 years of her sentence before being released for providing evidence in other trafficking cases. Now she stood uncertain, clearly debating whether to flee. Eliza made the decision for her, walking over with a cup of cider. Catherine, I shouldn't have come. I heard about the festival. You're welcome here, Eliza said simply. We've all done things we regret. What matters is what we do next. Catherine's eyes filled. I don't deserve. None of us deserve grace. That's what makes it grace. Eliza pressed the cup into her hands. Stay, dance, begin again. As the festival continued around them, Eliza found herself thinking about the strange paths that led people to redemption. A year ago, she'd stood in a saloon, terrified but determined, while Jacob tore away her veil in a gesture that had become valley legend. Now she stood in the same spot, transformed into the veil and lantern, surrounded by proof that a light could indeed overcome darkness. "Mama!" a voice called. Young Sarah Hendricks ran up, breathless with excitement. "Mama says to tell you the pie contest is starting. You're judging, remember?" "I remember." Eliza smoothed the girl's hair, remembering another Sarah who hadn't lived to see this rebirth. "Tell your mama I'm coming." As she walked through the crowd, greeting neighbors, solving small disputes, celebrating successes, Eliza marveled at the journey, from desperate bride to respected businesswoman, from stranger to heart of the community, from a marriage of convenience to a love deeper than she'd dreamed possible. "You coming?" Jacob called. Anna rose, now fussing for her evening feeding. "Always," she called back, meaning more than just the pie contest. The sun set over Cottonwood Creek, painting the sky in shades of hope and promise, and in the valley below, a community that had chosen courage over fear, love over law, and redemption over revenge continued to write its story, one choice, one day, one act of grace at a time. The veil had been torn away. What remained was truth, beauty, and the unshakable bonds of people who'd faced the worst together and chosen to build something better. In years to come, when Anna Rose and her siblings asked about the old days, Eliza would tell them this: "We came seeking survival and found salvation, not from above, but from within, from each other, from the choice to stand when kneeling would have been easier, to speak when silence would have been safer, to love when hate would have been simpler. And that," she would always conclude, touching the silver comb Jacob had given her on their wedding day, "is how the West was truly won, not with guns or gold, but with courage, community, and the conviction that tomorrow could be better than yesterday." The story of the mail-order bride who helped save a valley would be told for generations, but for now, in the lamplight of the veil and lantern, surrounded by laughter and love, Eliza Cole simply lived it one precious, hard-won moment at a time. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss what you thought about Eliza and Jacob's journey. If you enjoyed this tale from the Old West, please subscribe to Wild West Night. Give this video a like, and hit that hype button to help more people discover these stories of courage, love, and redemption in the American frontier. Your support means the world to me, and I can't wait to share more stories with you. Until next time, partners.